Hi everyone, welcome back to another show, Fermented 15. I'm Arthur from the Crafty Pickle Co, and today I'm going to show you how to make a Korean kimchi. Right, so there's a lot of versions of kimchi out there. You got your Korean version, which has a base of Chinese cabbage, carrot. Sometimes it doesn't have carrot. There's honestly a whole bunch of different styles of kimchi. Everybody sort of has their own version. And as it is increasingly becoming more westernized, people have been doing crazy things like green tomato kimchi, white kimchi. You do cucumber pickle kimchi. So I've seen everything. We do a sauerkraut type of kimchi, so it's not your traditional type of kimchi. But today, like I said, what I'm going to be showing you is to make a traditional kimchi. So there's a few key ingredients when it comes to kimchi. You have your Chinese cabbage here, but we actually mixed a little bit of white cabbage as well. We just had some left over in our fridge. You have a radish of some sort. You can use red radish, but this is a mooli, or some people call it daikon radish. Carrot. We have some garlic and ginger here, which we're going to use for a chili paste when we mix it with our gochujang powder. And then we have spring onion. So there's a few things you can do with kimchi. So you can do a dry salting method where you just add salt to the cabbage that's shredded, similar to this. So I'm just going to show this right here. You have this cabbage that's been like coarsely cut. We decided to soak it in a brine. Because traditional methods of kimchi production, you would actually soak it in a salty brine anywhere from 5 to 12 hours, depending on the concentration of your brine. So right here we did a 5% brine, and you probably want to soak that for around 6 to 8 hours. We actually soaked this a bit shorter. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this brine and pour it off. Because you don't want to use the brine. You just really want this salt to penetrate the vegetable. And basically what the salt is doing is it's extracting even more liquid out of the vegetable and allowing sort of the flavors that we add later on in the process to penetrate the vegetable a bit better. So the chili, the garlic, the ginger will be sort of massaged into the vegetable. Right, so now I'm doing this right here instead of over a sink because it's much easier for this video. So now I'm just gonna rinse it off. So if you were at home making kimchi, you'd want to rinse it under cold water, but I just have a jug of cold water here. Used to rinse off the excess salt. And I'm probably making a mess. Alright. So again, you don't have to do this brining method because we don't like doing it in our production because we find it's a bit of a waste of water because all this brine essentially is just going down the drain. So with a dry salting method, if you want to look at our sauerkraut video, that's a dry salting method. So now that this is rinsed, I'm going to go ahead and put it back into this bowl. So again, guys, we add salt for a few reasons. For one, it makes sure the vegetables remain sort of hard, so they maintain their crunchiness during the fermentation process. And it also selects for salt-tolerant microbes or lactic acid bacteria. And lactic acid bacteria, again, live on all vegetables, fruit, and stuff that are grown in soil. So all we're doing is allowing the salt to select for these lactic acid bacteria to inhibit the growth of anything that could spoil our cabbage or maybe cause us to get sick. So now that I've already dumped it off, there might be some liquid that actually comes out of it, but it might actually need more massaging here. So there's already some liquid that's being extracted from the veg, so this is not going to take that much work. When you soak the veg in salt, it's going to need less physical work through massaging and whatnot. So what I'm going to start doing here is I'm going to add the spring onion. So you can cut the spring onion any way you want. I like big chunks, so I'm just gonna kind of cut them lengthwise and halfwise. It's not the easiest doing it this way, but it allows us to have a bit of a chunkier kimchi, which kimchi is known for its chunkiness. Again, if you don't like a chunky kimchi, you can cut your vegetables a lot more finely. So I'm just gonna chop this up. I love the smell of chopped spring onions. It's amazing. And I failed to mention that actually before you start all this, just make sure that you have proper food safety practices. So you wash your hands, you wash your veg, you wash your equipment, and you can wash your jar that you're going to actually fill with kimchi in as well. So I'm just going to mix this around a little bit. So you just really want to get it all mixed through. I'm going to go ahead and chop this garlic and this ginger. Let's move back so you can see what I'm doing. So you want to chop your garlic and ginger quite finely because you want little pieces. You don't want big chunks of garlic and ginger unless you like that. But you also want it finer so it can coat more of the vegetables that are chopped up. So generally, if you're at home, you could make it into a paste. So you can put whole garlic and ginger into a blender and blend it up, and then it'll make a nice paste. You can sprinkle some of that gochujang powder that I was talking about into that, and you can make a nice chili paste with garlic, ginger, and chili. But for today's purposes, I'm just going to chop it very finely. Ginger is quite sticky. Right. So again, you don't have to do garlic and ginger if you don't like either. You don't even have to do chili. Generally, a traditional kimchi will have fish sauce. If that's your thing, you can add that. Or we're just going to make a vegan version because it's sort of friendly for everybody. Right, so I have this chopped pretty finely right now. I think this should be good enough. There we go. Just get that in the bowl. Now, I'm going to sprinkle some powder on it. So as you can see here, I got the ginger and the garlic chopped up. I'm just going to sprinkle a bunch of powder on it. I'm pretty generous with the powder. And gochujang, which is great, it's not very expensive, and it's not very spicy as well. So it's a good alternative if you're not used to a lot of spice. So let's see if this is enough. I like a nice color. So you want kind of your kimchi to be a deep red. If you know our cat's kimchi, it's not really red. It's because we use a different type of chili to make it a bit more spicy. Oh, I love the color of this. So the massaging does a few things. It makes sure that your vegetables are well coated with the spices. Also, if you're working with salt, it makes sure that the salt is penetrating the vegetable. There we go. Look, it's already a beautiful color. And you can see that juice is already coming out. And just for fun, I'm going to add more gochujang. Because, again, it's not that spicy and it has a nice smokiness to it as well. The active massaging releases that liquid, which you need to keep your kimchi in an anaerobic environment. And when I say anaerobic, back over here, of course I'm talking about an oxygen-free environment. So the lactic acid bacteria that I was discussing earlier requires no oxygen to grow. They're actually facultative anaerobes, meaning they can survive in both oxygen-rich environments and oxygen-poor environments. But in terms of their growth, they prefer an oxygen-poor environment. So that's why you want to make sure you have sufficient enough liquid to make sure that you can put it in your jar and it maintains a level under. One thing I failed to mention in the beginning, so before you get started, make sure that if you are chopping up Chinese cabbage, that you maintain at least one of the outer leaves. You can do this on a regular white cabbage, but you just want to keep that outer leaf so you can use it to put on top to protect your kimchi from air exposure once you put it in the jar. So really, you can massage this all day if you want to, but once you have this liquid, and I can show you here, that once you have this liquid, I always like to push down. And when I can push down my hands and I can see the liquid coming over my fingertips, I know that it's ready to be packed in a jar. But before that, I also want to make sure I season it properly, so I'm going to give it a taste. That's nice. It's perfectly salty. You don't need to add any more salt. Some people like to be very precise in their salt measurements. We like to recommend anything above 2% is safe, and it was sitting in a 5% brine. You only rinsed it once, so it's likely not below 2%. Again, you can add more if you like it. Salt is not the only thing keeping you from getting sick from your ferment. Salt protects the ferment, make sure it is safe, but again, it promotes the growth of those lactic acid bacteria that will eventually do the fermentation for us, which lowers the pH through the production of lactic acid. So lactic acid, not salt, is the preserving agent. Okay? So I have been making a mess. I just need that. Right. So now I'm going to fill my jar. So I'm just going to take about a handful and stuff it. When you're preparing your kimchi, you want to make sure that you prepare the right amount of veg for your jar. So this is a 1 liter jar. My assistant Madeline, you might know her as the other co-founder of Crafty Pickle, had previously weighed the vegetable to 900 grams. The reason she left that 100 gram space for this jar is because during fermentation, as the lactic acid bacteria and other bacteria grow, they produce gases, and these gases will push up your vegetable to the point where it could make your jar leak, or it brings that brine that I was talking about sort of over the top of the jar, and then you'll get a leak on your hand. So filling it up a little less will allow for that fermentation expansion that's inevitable within the first 72 hours of fermentation. Beautiful color. Oh, no. I think this is one of the messier things, but I really like massaging sauerkraut and kimchi and these other vegetables because it gets you close and personal with your food. I think we're kind of disconnected from our food nowadays because we just see it all prepared for us on supermarket shelves, and we're not really seeing where it comes from. I mean, and we're not really working with our hands to order takeaways. And that's okay too, but we're just not connecting with our food like we used to. We're not growing our food as much anymore. We're not preparing it like this. Right, so now that you got my jar full, I'm just gonna bring this over here and show you. It's messy, it's not supposed to be pretty, but that's what you want, about that much space. So, yeah, you want about that much space between the top and the liquid there. So I'm going to go ahead and put this cabbage leaf on top. There we go. So I'm just going to stick this cabbage leaf on top, and I'm going to tuck it under. So this cabbage leaf is protecting the top of the kimchi from air exposure. Air exposure will promote the growth of yeasts and mold, which you don't want on your ferment. So as long as everything's under the liquid like that, you shouldn't get any growth. But if you do get it, catch it early, peel it off or scoop it off your ferment, and just check it every few days. It's most prone to mold growth when that liquid goes under or below the cabbage leaf. So I'm just gonna pop the lid on there. So there we go. that is a very messy jar of kimchi. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's Fermented 15. I'm Arthur, and we'll see you next time.